And finally, I just want to say thank you again to everyone who chose to share their simchas with us tonight. What a wonderful, wonderful way to celebrate Shabbat with birthdays, babies, and marriages. It's so wonderful having these joyous events to celebrate, especially at a time when everything in our world feels so contentious, so fraught with anger and sadness and misunderstanding. It's important for us to be able to come together as a community and celebrate our simchas, our joys. Because as bifurcated as this country feels, our Jewish community is facing a split equally as defining. According to the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, nowhere did this emerge more clearly than at an Anti-Defamation League conference and subsequent Zionist Organization of America dinner. They were held days apart from each other on the same floor of the same posh hotel in Manhattan, both organizations claiming to fight for the same things, but their rhetoric could hardly have been more different. The article on how different parts of the community are responding to our modern political realities might have highlighted these two specific organizations and the differences that bubbled up to the surface this past week. But there have been schisms in Jewish opinion for some time, as there should be. A quick glance at the Talmud, and it's easy to see, Jews have never been of one mind. Even before that, we can go back to the moment of revelation at Mount Sinai and remember the teaching that every single soul present at Sinai heard God differently in their own way. And this reminds us that even with the same facts in front of us, we all may draw different conclusions. So how do we move forward as a community? If we watch the same interaction, hear the same words, and some of us walk away filled with joy and excitement, while others feel anxiety and grief, how do we find common ground? In this week's Torah portion, oh, don't worry, Charlie, it'll be okay. Let me get to the good stuff. In this week's Torah portion, Hayei Sarah, we're told about the end of Abraham's life, and we read a few quick yet incredibly meaningful verses. We learn that Ishmael and Isaac come together to bury their father, Abraham. These two boys had unimaginable struggles and differences. Want to talk about different narratives? Imagine the difference in how Hagar and Sarah explained to each of their sons why they were separated from the other while growing up. And it's not simply different narratives or possible anger toward the other they each had to set aside in order to be there. But there was probably a lot of pain towards their father as well. He sent Ishmael away. He nearly sacrificed Isaac. He was not exactly a model father for each of them. And yet, they come together to honor him and lay him to rest. One might say, but they're family. You have to forgive family, right? Well, as I stand here today, the day after Thanksgiving, I share with you what I'm sure is shocking news to everyone, that fighting with family can be some of the worst, hardest, most difficult arguments we encounter in our entire lives. Proverbs 18:19 teaches us that a sibling sinned against is harder to be won over than a fortified city, and such quarrels are like the bars of a castle. And yet, Ishmael and Isaac came together. They somehow looked past the pain, the anger, the diverging narratives and beliefs from their past, and they stood side by side with a common purpose: to bury and honor their father. What can we learn from this story? Is it simply that Ishmael and Isaac were both better, more forgiving people than most of us today? No. We learn that when you have a common purpose to unite behind, all people can put differences aside and work together. This is important because now is the time for us to come together and work toward the common goals of ensuring our safety, our freedom of religious expression, and our age-old promise that never again will we let hate or fear win a society over and allow minorities to suffer at their hands. Why do I say this? It is not because of an election or political rhetoric. This past Monday, the news was flooded with quotes and footage from a convention of the alt-right, which we can now safely claim is basically just a new brand name for neo-Nazi. In this coverage, we saw them evoking Nazi language and customs, quoting Nazi thinkers, and claiming that Jews are not really people. This is happening. This is real. There is no argument over the fact that this happened on Monday, in 2016, in a federal building a few blocks away from the White House. There's no argument that this is how the leaders of the alt-right movement and the participants in their national conference identified themselves and their beliefs. One reporter noted the following about a speech from their leading ideologue. He wrote, "He rallied against Jews and, with a smile, quoted Nazi propaganda in the original German. America, he said, belonged to white people, whom he called the children of the sun, a race of conquerors and creators who had been marginalized, but now were awakening to their own identity." As he finished, he and several audience members had their arms outstretched in a Nazi salute. This is scary. This transcends political parties, candidates, and votes. And right now, it doesn't matter how we got here. We are here. This is happening. So it's time for us to put our political differences aside and work together toward a common good. Yes, we want freedom of religion and acceptance of all people everywhere. But for one moment, let's focus on our own community. Let us stand together and denounce anti-Semitism and do what we can to diminish hate and further our religious freedoms. Like Ishmael and Isaac before us, we must stand together if we want to change the world. And this work can not only focus on the world around us, it must also focus on the world within us. We all speak often about tikkun olam, about the need to repair the world to be God's partner in purging this earth of the shards of brokenness embedded within it. That remains as true today as it ever was. There's a second piece, though, that is also required in order to have success with the first. Though spoken of a little less often, it is by no means less important. That is the practice of tikkun midot, the cultivation of our own individual moral traits. Through focusing on ourselves and the way we engage with the world around us, we can not only improve the value of our own lives, but also the community. We begin with ourselves in order to make this world a better place. I wish I had more to say. I wish I had more answers to offer you. But unfortunately, I don't know a magical way to remove an ideology of hate. All I can advise is that we look upon it and each other with open and fresh eyes. We recognize and accept that this is happening, that we, like Isaac and Ishmael, put our past behind us and stand side by side, and together declare that hate speech is not okay, and that we endeavor not only to repair the world, but also to better ourselves. I pray that together these things will be enough to guide us to a brighter tomorrow. Shabbat Shalom.